Well, today I'm back with the ranking. This time I'll be ranking the Def Leppard albums. I'm surprised I haven't done this yet on my channel, but either way, here we are. But yeah, this is actually the next band that I'll be seeing live. I'll be seeing Def Leppard live in a couple days. I'm definitely really looking forward to that. I'll be on the floor, and yeah, definitely pretty pumped to see them live for sure. But let's go ahead and dive into this ranking. I'll be going from worst to best. Keep in mind, this is all just my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but feel free to let me know your ranking of the albums in the comment section below. But at the bottom, this was a pretty easy choice for me. I've always thought this album was their worst, and this is really the only album that I would say is straight up bad in their discography. And that album is X from 2002. You can make the argument that this is maybe their most poppy album, and this album has just never done anything for me. I mean, really the only song I like off this album is the album opener, Now. I think that's a decent pop rock tune for them, but the rest of the album does nothing for me. I know some people do like track number 5, Long Long Way to Go. That song has never done much for me. But yeah, again, always found this album to be easily their worst. Not a big fan of the more poppy direction they went on that album. Then next we're moving to the album that has the covers, Yeah. And this album, I wouldn't say it's bad. I just think it's kind of meh to all right. But this is an album. Whenever I'm in the mood for Def Leppard, this is just an album that I rarely ever reach for, if I'm being honest. But yeah, not terrible, not bad, but again, not really something that I return to all that much. For me, the replay on that album is not as strong as many of their other albums in their discography, at least for me personally. But again, not terrible. Moving to the next album, we have songs from the Sparkle Lounge. And this album is alright. Not great or amazing, but alright though. There is some good stuff on here. I do like Go, Tomorrow. Cruise Control is also solid. Come On Done's kind of an underrated song off the album. But yeah, there are some good songs on here, but to me, I feel like they've done better though. But overall, a decent album. But now we're moving to their latest album, Diamond Star Halos. I liked it when it came out, but as time has gone on, my opinion on the album has kind of lowered over time. But with that said, I still think it's an okay album. It's a decent album. I do think it is better than Sparkle Lounge. But yeah, there are some good songs on here, like Take What You Want and Kick. I think those are some solid singles for the band. And I think From Here to Eternity is one of the stronger songs off the album. I'm personally not too big on the songs with Alison Krauss, if I got the name right. I believe she does 2 songs on here, and I'm not a fan of either song, if I'm being honest. You Rock Me, if I remember correctly, is one of the more decent songs off the album. But yeah, there are some good songs on here, but for me, one of their weaker albums. And now we're moving to, in my opinion, easily the best album of their more modern stuff, or at least the stuff they've done from the 2000s on, and that is the self-titled album. Really dug this album when it first came out, actually. I mean, I probably wouldn't say I like it as much as when it first came out, but I still think it's overall a solid album, a good album. I mean, some of my favorites on here, Let's Go, which definitely sounds straight from the 80s. I mean, if I remember correctly, that song, I remember some people making comparisons to Pour Some Sugar on Me with that song, if I'm thinking of the right song. But either way, Let's Go, I think, is a solid way to open up the album. Feels like classic Def Leppard. Dangerous is another solid single off the album. You move towards some of the deeper cuts. I think Wings of an Angel is one of the stronger songs off the album and kind of underrated. All Time High, I think, is also pretty good. Sea of Love is also another really good song, another one of my favorites on the album. And yeah, there's maybe 1 or 2 skippable songs on here, but overall, I'd say a solid album. And again, easily the best of their more modern stuff, at least in my opinion. But now we're moving to one of their more divisive albums. I have seen some love for this album, but I know there is definitely a share of fans that also do not like this album, and that album is, of course, Slang. So yeah, definitely one of their more different sounding albums, and doesn't really sound like really any other albums from before or after it. I mean, But I do still, I personally think it's a good album. It's not going to be for every fan. I mean, I know some people would probably have it higher, while of course some others would probably have it lower. But for me, it's more closer to the middle. I mean, I do think it's a solid album. There not every song works for me on here, but there is some good songs on here, like Truth. I think that's a solid way to open up the album. And even the title track Slang, which is probably one of the more poppy songs off the album, I even like that song. I'll admit, I think it's kind of catchy. And when it comes to what I think is the strongest song on here, I'd easily go with the song Work It Out. I think that song is one of the band's best singles when it comes to their 90s output. You move towards some of the other songs. I think Deliver Me is a pretty good deep cut off the album. Gift of Flesh, I think, is also really good. But yeah, there is some good stuff on this album. Again, might not be for every fan due to how different it is, but I personally think it's good. Good album. Not great or amazing. Not top shelf Def Leppard, but still solid stuff, though, at least in my opinion. But next, we'll be moving to Euphoria, which sees them doing a bit of a return to form. And yeah, another good album. Not every song on here works for me. There's maybe 2 or 3 skippable songs on here, but that's about it, though. But you do get some solid songs on here, like Promises, which I think is a pretty good single for them, and easily one of the strongest songs on the album. Feels like classic 80s Def Leppard, more Power Mania / Hysteria rather than High and Dry or On Through the Night, but still 80s Def Leppard for sure. But Promises, pretty good song. Paper Sun is another one of my favorites on the album. Move towards the second half. Day After Day is definitely one of my favorites when it comes to the second half. Goodbye, I think, is another solid single for the band. Demolition Man's also pretty good. But yeah, maybe a few skippable songs on here, but still another solid album for Def Leppard. And now we're moving to their debut album, On Through the Night. And overall, solid debut album. I mean, if I were to name some of my favorites, Rock Brigade, that's a pretty good song, maybe one of their best album openers. Wasted is probably my favorite song off the album. I really like that song. Hello America is also solid. You move towards some of the deeper cuts. I think Answer to the Master is pretty good. Rocks Off is another song I like off the album. Kind of an underrated cut off the album, but I do like that one. Overture is another song that I find to be kind of underrated on the album too, and that's also the longest song on the album. But yeah, On Through the Night, solid debut. There are albums that I do like more, but still solid start to the discography, I'd say. But now we're moving to Adrenalize, the first album without Steve Clark, rest in peace. And I personally really dig this album a lot. I think it's a strong follow-up to Hysteria. I know for some people this album is a step down from Hysteria, and I get it, but with this album you can tell it's a bit darker, but still feels like Def Leppard, of course. You have your share of Def Leppard anthems on here, like Let's Get Rocked and Make Love Like a Man and Heaven Is, but I think he gets one of the band's best ballads on here with Stand Up, Kick Love into Motion. I don't know how other fans feel about that song, but personally I think it's one of their best ballads. I really love that song a lot, and honestly probably a top 20 Def Leppard song for me. Maybe top 15, I'm not sure, but top 20 absolutely. I really like that song. Definitely a strong ballad for them. I Want to Touch You is kind of an underrated single for them in my opinion. I do dig that song. You have the song Tonight, which is a bit darker, a bit more haunting, and a bit more melodic. I personally dig that song too. But yeah, for me, another really good album from Def Leppard. And if you haven't heard it in a while, I'd definitely give it another listen. Pretty good album in my opinion. And now we're moving to probably one of the biggest albums of the 80s and also their most commercially successful album, and for obvious reasons, Hysteria. Of course, you have some of the band's biggest hits on here, like Rocket, Animal, Love Bites, and of course, Pour Some Sugar on Me, the title track. But you move towards the deeper cuts. I do really like Gods of War and Love and Affection, which I think is one of the band's best album closers. Don't Shoot Shotgun's also solid. You also have Animal, which I think is easily one of the band's best singles. Woman, which, if I remember correctly, was the first single. I remember hearing about that somewhere. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but if it is, either way, I think that's another solid single off the album. But yeah, still a pretty good album in my opinion. I can understand why some people might call this overrated or overplayed, depending on who you ask. But personally, I still think this is still a really good album. But next, we're moving to their second album, High and Dry. I'll be honest, Hysteria and this album kind of go back and forth for me when it comes to within my ranking. But if I'm being honest, if we're talking front to back listens, I think High and Dry is probably the stronger album. But of course, my mind on that could change at any time. But as of now, this is my number 2 in my Def Leppard ranking. But you have so many great songs on here, like Let It Go, which is one of the band's best album openers. Of course, you have one of their biggest hits, Bringing On the Heartbreak, which I still think is still a pretty good song. You also have No, 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 which is maybe one of their heaviest songs. I really like that one. But yeah, I think you also get some really good deep cuts in this album. Some of the band's best deep cuts, in my opinion, such as songs like Another Hit and Run, which is a solid anthem for them. Same with High and Dry, the title track. Mirror Mirror is another one of my favorite deep cuts from the band too. You also have a pretty good instrumental by the name of Switch 625. But yeah, all around, really great album and definitely one of the band's best in my opinion. And I can understand, and I can see how some people might even make an argument for saying this album is maybe their best. But my choice is different. Now we're moving to my number 1 and also one of my favorite albums of all time, and that album is Pyromania. To me, with this album, you get a good balance of their more commercial side, which you would get later after this album, and you also still have the harder stuff that you get from the album before it, High and Dry. I think you get a good mix of those two things in this album. But of course, you have some of their biggest songs on here, like Photograph and Rock of Ages. But you also have the song Foolin', which is maybe a contender for maybe being my favorite Def Leppard song. I absolutely love that song. Definitely one of their best anthems, in my opinion. But this is a great album from front to back, in my opinion. For me, this is a no skip album. If I were to pick which song I think is maybe the weakest, I'd probably go with Action Not Words. But even that song I still think is solid, though. Again, I still think this is a no skip album, and while you do get some pretty strong singles off this album, I think you get some really good deep cuts, some of the band's best deep cuts, songs like Coming Under Fire and Die Hard the Hunter. I really like Stage Fright. That's a fairly catchy song for them. Then you also have one of my favorite one of my favorite album closers from the band, Billy's Got a Gun. I mean, I absolutely love that song. That's maybe another top 20 Def Leppard song for me. I don't know. I do think, and that's maybe one of my favorites on the album too. I really like that song a lot. And of course, you also have Too Late for Love, another pretty good song off the album, and another one of the more fan favorites off the album. But yeah, Pyromania, again, a perfect 10 out of 10 album for me personally. Absolutely love this album. But that is my number 1. Let me know your thoughts on my ranking. Of course, let me know your ranking of the Def Leppard albums in the comment section below and all the good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and a like, subscribe. Have a nice day and take care.